Hey guys, Ben here and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about Smallville because Tom Welling has come out with some interesting comments to do with some decisions he made in the past. So if you do go on to enjoy the video, please be sure to leave a like and a comment and subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future videos later this year. So this is coming from Screen Rant. This is written by my friend Andy, who you guys all know. Links will be in the description below. And so this was from the Fan Expo in New Orleans recently. So we're going to discuss the article titled Smallville star Tom Welling defends decision not to appear as Clark Kent in the Arrowverse before Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover, before we move on to Tom Welling's least favourite storyline in all 10 seasons of Smallville. So first things first, this is how the first article goes. After appearing in the Arrowverse as Clark Kent from Smallville, Tom Welling addresses what prevented him showing up on other DC TV shows before his actual appearance. While most fans thought they had seen the last of Welling as the Man of Steel after the Smallville ending in 2011, the Arrowverse gave the world a treat when he and Erica Durance reprised their roles for Crisis on Infinite Earths. However, this wasn't the first time the Arrowverse producers had tried to get Welling back as his Smallville character. So at this year's Fan Expo in New Orleans, the Smallville cast was present, including Welling, where he brought up his visit to the Arrowverse. However, the Smallville lead also explained why he didn't do any guest spots as his character in the Arrowverse before 2019, as he gave the following response. I had gotten some calls, but they weren't about me acting on these shows. It was me playing Clark on those shows, and I really felt protective of the fact that Clark wouldn't exist on those shows. And the article continues by saying, even though Smallville's success is a major reason why the Arrowverse even became a possibility on the CW, it makes sense for a number of reasons why Welling would pass on appearances prior to Crisis. Smallville had already established a universe where many of the Justice League characters existed, and many of them would go on to be reimagined in the Arrowverse with other actors playing them, while retrospectively fitting Smallville in the Arrowverse timeline would, in theory, have been possible. It would have led to many creative complications. Had Welling been used as Superman for the Arrowverse when Clark was introduced in Supergirl Season 2, it would have likely meant a limited run with a version of the DC icon. Not only would it have prevented Tyler from being cast in the Arrowverse, but Superman and Lois would most likely have never have happened in the first place. It is also clear that Welling was very observant of how bringing his Superman into the Arrowverse would take away so much of what Smallville accomplished, which is why the Crisis cameo was a far better decision for him as an actor. And so this is Andy's take on his comments. So Welling being protective of his Smallville character arguably benefited his version of Clark in the long run, especially as it avoided a big headache for the Arrowverse in terms of revising the franchise. It's also worth taking into account that by declining appearances on other Arrowverse shows, there is more creative freedom left for Welling's Superman to be used in the future, especially if the Smallville animated sequel TV show goes forward. So that is the article. That is what Andy had to say about Tom Welling's comments, and I have to agree. I have to say, I think it was good that he was protective, and I would want someone like, say, Grant Gustin or Melissa Benoist or Steven to be protective of the characters that they played and go about it in a logical way. Obviously, if you're offered a role, you have to consider it, right? And if you're a fan of it, like we know Grant is, for example, like he has said he would love to play the Flash in the DCU if James Gunn asked him, he would obviously have to consider the consequences. But I think there's less consequences for the Arrowverse because it was so expansive anyway. But with Smallville, it was more isolated, it was its own thing. Yes, it technically spawned the Arrowverse and it influenced it, but it wasn't a part of the Arrowverse really until Tom showed up in the Crisis crossover, despite actors like Erica Durance coming back previously. So if he was cast as Clark, like straight up the main Arrowverse Clark Kent and Superman, yeah, that would have prevented Tyler from ever being cast. So I think in the end, I'm thankful that Tom didn't go ahead and become like the main Arrowverse Superman, despite having offers to appear in certain shows throughout the years. And I agree, it just would have been way too complicated if they wanted to incorporate Smallville properly into the Arrowverse. Then they would have to explain why is there all these different characters. Obviously you can just say multiverse, that makes sense, you know, you can have two versions of Superman, you can have multiple versions of any characters, so that's why it made sense to bring him in Crisis, because that was like the biggest crossover, and you had like Titans crossing over, you had Doom Patrol, so why not go back to Smallville and have Tom Welling show up as his Smallville character, but also he wasn't technically the same because he didn't have his powers, because this version Clark Kent gave them up. But for now, let's move on to the next article. This is again from Andy, and the article is titled "I Hated It," and which is a quote from Tom Welling, as Tom Welling reveals his least favourite storyline in all 10 seasons of Smallville. So we're going to read this out. Again, link will be in the description below to Andy's article. So Tom Welling explains what his least favourite Smallville storyline was and why he had issues with that specific arc in the DC TV drama. While Smallville served as the Man of Steel's ultimate origin story, the live-action Superman TV show was able to take a lot of creative liberties with Clark Kent's journey before he eventually suited up as the DC hero before donning the Superman mantle. Clark began his superhero career in Metropolis being known as the Red Blue Blur before eventually being known as just the Blur in Smallville Season 10. During their appearance at this year's Fan Expo New Orleans, same as the other article, Smallville cast discussed storylines from the show's decade-long run. In Welling's case, he brought up his least favourite arc during Smallville's trajectory was the Red Blue Blur saga, as the cast had the following exchange about it. So Tom Welling says this: "I'll tell you, my least favourite storyline was the Red Blue Blur stuff." Erica Durant says, "I was going to say it's my favourite because you hated it so much." Tom says, "I hated it, you saw me being just disgruntled." Erica says, "It was weird." Tom says, "I knew it needed to happen because we were dying." And Erica says, "But it was really hard to say Red Blue Blur," which is very, very true. And Laura Vandervoort says, "What was the Red Blue Blur thing?" And then Tom Welling goes on to say, "It was the stupid thing where Clark had this alter ego where he was dressed in black and he was like Batman. And then as much as I hated it and Clark really didn't like it, I had to do scenes with Lois who keeps saying how great the Red Blue Blur is, and it was like, what are we doing? It was just Clark being a vigilante at night." So that is Tom Welling's least favourite storyline in the show. Now let's read what Andy had to say about this. So Welling's commentary about Clark's darker days as a hero is specifically about Smallville Season 9. That was when Clark switched to a full black costume with the intention to no longer focus on his human life but only operate as Earth's protector in the shadows. It's key to remember that the reason Clark took this term was because the aftermath in Smallville Season 8, which was a metaphorical death for Welling's character during its version of the Doomsday Saga. And this is why Smallville Season 9 focuses on Clark's redevelopment of getting out of that mindset to get himself closer to being the hopeful hero he was always meant to be, aka Superman. Welling's comments highlight the idea that having Clark as a brooding vigilante was a very non-Superman direction for the character to go, hence why there was more of an optimistic change in Smallville Season 10. So what Tom is saying here is that he thinks the kind of Batman-esque vigilante story for Superman was a bit stupid, that he didn't like him being not really like Superman, because, you know, Superman is all about hope, he's about optimism, and he's not about, you know, being this kind of masked vigilante. And I guess that's just one of the things that Tom didn't like whilst filming the show, well, one specific storyline. And so to end our comments on this article and to read out Andy's final paragraph, he says, "Despite its many strengths, Welling's comments about the darker days of Smallville's Blur saga are valid because there were moments in that season where Clark made questionable moves because of the darkness he was dealing with. However, that approach is arguably one of the reasons why Smallville works as well as it did, because the writers could take their own spin on Superman's origin story before he eventually became the DC icon. In the end, if Clark hadn't gone through that dark period as a hero in training, he could have very well missed some of his most important lessons during Smallville." So there you have it. Let me know down in the comments below, do you agree with Tom Welling? Do you think that is the worst storyline in all of Smallville? I would say Probably most of you are going to disagree with that, but there will be some of you that are like, no, that's not Superman, I didn't like that at all, that was not my storyline that I wanted to see. So go down in the comments and let us know. But I think every actor is entitled to their opinions about their storylines. Obviously, Tom is quite open about his feelings about Smallville, about certain things, and I appreciate that, and I like talking about it when he is going out and saying these things at these Comic-Con events, because it's nice to revisit Smallville and nice to revisit certain storylines that he talks about. So that pretty much does it for this video, guys. If you did enjoy the video, please be sure to leave a like and a comment. Also subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future videos, but for now you can click on the top right corner of the screen to watch my latest video, and I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye.